chapter, do you have any questions about the previous 2 chapters? Do you have any questions about the previous 2 chapters? Yeah? Can you stop texting, please? Please, can you stop texting? Okay. So, do you have, yes, question? Okay, if you did not understand that, you could have come to me before the exam, not after the exam, okay? We have a slide, if you remember. If you studied the slides, if you were listening to me in class, it would be easy for you. Actually, if you look at the page, I need you to look at, to show you that I actually used the same question in your textbook. So if you have read the textbook, you would have known that it is the same question. Look at page 60, please. Look at page 60. What does it say? B. Look at discussion topics project B. English words are like audible and edible. Can you find them? Yeah? You see that question I here. What types of assimilation processes appear to have been involved in the pronunciation of the following negatives? I substituted negatives for words. And I chose to say different examples. So if you've been, we did this question, didn't we? Yes. Yes. We talked about it. Didn't we talk about impossible? Didn't we talk about incomplete? Yeah? So we talked about it. So if you have read the questions that we have talked about, if you have read the slides that we talked about, you wouldn't have a problem. But it seems you did not actually bother to look at that. Let me show you. The last lecture, look at assimilation. We talked about assimilation, we talked about examples, and we talked about assimilation in manner of articulation. I even used the same example. Ban. Have you looked at the slides?
Yes.
Yes, so if you've looked at the slides, if you studied well, you will know they actually, I used the same example in the exam with ban. Yeah? And number 2, you have, instead of incomplete, in place of articulation, I use, or I can go, inglorious. So you have na and ga, just like I can go. So if you have been studying well, you wouldn't have any problems. If you've been listening to me, you wouldn't have any problems in the exam. So it seems you did not study, just like I told you to. You did not look at the slides. So if you looked at the slides, you would have known how to answer the question. Good? Next time when you study for the second exam, listen to every word I say and study the slides that I give you. So how do I know that a student actually did not study, did not bother to look at the textbook from these questions? Okay, I did not understand that. Did you look at the slides? Did you look at the textbook? Actually, I used the same examples from the slides and the same question from the textbook. The question is, did you have a look at the textbook? Did you have a look at the slides? The answer is no. Because if you have, you wouldn't ask me these questions. You see what I'm talking about? So next time, let's forget about the first exam. It's only 20% from the whole course. So don't be disappointed. You still have 80%. So you still have 20% for the second exam. You still have 50% for the final and 10% for participation. So forget about the first exam and start working on your second exam. Okay? So in second exam, what I need you to do to study is to listen to every word I say, and please download the slides. You didn't download them because if you did, you wouldn't ask me questions just like those. If you have looked at the textbook, you wouldn't ask me questions just like those. So it's the same question in the textbook. I only changed the examples. And I used one example from the slides. Ban. Didn't we have this word in the exam?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you looked at this, if you studied this, you wouldn't have a problem. You see what I'm talking about? So next time, what I need you to do, look at the slides, study the slides, really important. Actually, the slides, you have all the important points in the textbook. So actually, I'm making things easy for you. So instead of actually reading all that, of course you have to read it, but not actually to memorize every single word. It could be confusing to read the whole textbook. What you can do, look at the slides that I do, that I spent hours doing. So what you can do, look at the important points that you need to study. And that's it, you'll be fine. And listen to every word I say. And one more thing, you have to keep up with the course. It means you cannot postpone your study to a day before the exam. It's not going to work. You're going to fail. It's not going to work. Even if you were a genius, it's not going to work. Or you are really good at memorization. We're not memorizing here. We have to understand everything that we say. So if you notice in the exam, we did not have definitions, we did not have mention, we did not have, I don't do this. This is not the kind of questions I give. What I need you to do is to understand what we talk about. When you understand, you will never forget what we talk about. Okay? So change your study technique for the second exam. Download the slides, look at them, study the textbook, and look at the questions that I answer in class. Really important. Good? So actually, I can tell which student studied and which student did not study from your questions. Really, from your questions. Because if you studied, you would have known what kind of questions I've given you in the exam. Yeah? Okay. So we're not going to look back. What we need now to look to the future. To look what we can do with the second exam. Okay? So what you can do with the second exam, focus. Listen to what I say. Download the slides that I give you. I'm doing these slides for you. I'm not doing them for me. Okay? I'm doing them for you. So what I need you to do, and I showed you how to get the slides. Download them, read them. Good? Okay. Let's continue. Today we're going to start with a new chapter. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question one last time. Do you have any questions about the previous 2 chapters? If you still have any problems, download the slides from the previous chapters. If you read the slides and you still don't understand what we talk about, come to my office. I can help you. Good? Okay. We're going to start with a new chapter today. But before we talk about the new chapter, we need to go back to the components of language again. Yeah? Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah. We talked about it. I mean, every single chapter, when we start with every single chapter, we talk about components of language. So we said we cannot study the language as a whole. We need to study the components of language. The language is a very broad, let's say a very broad aspect to study. So what we can do, we can divide it into components and study each component separately. Okay? Component number 1 that we are done with is the sounds. Right? We're done with this component. We studied phonetics and we studied phonology. And now we know the difference between phonetics and phonology. Yesterday you had a question, distinguish between phonetics and phonology. I think all of you should do that. Yeah. Also, it's in the slides, the same question. What is the difference between phonetics and phonology? Right? Okay, good. We talked about this. We're done with that. We said both of them deal with sounds, but
Physical aspect phonetics.
But let's say each one of them has its own differences. Okay? They're not the same. Both of them deal with sound. You say this is the common thing between them, but they have differences as well. What we're going to do is we're going to start with words. So we're done with sounds. We said the sounds are the smallest unit of language. So a sound just like da, this is the phoneme da. It is the smallest unit of language. Now we're going to study a little bit bigger unit, which is the word. So in a word just like that, this unit of language is bigger than the unit of sound. That's why we're moving in this order. Okay? Before we study the morphology, which is the study of the structure of words, we're going to study the word formation processes. Okay? So we're going to leave this for later, phrases and sentences, which is syntax, and also meaning we're going to leave it for later. Okay? We're going to have like 2 chapters on words. The first chapter, if you look at your textbook, is going to be word formation processes. The second chapter is the morphological structure of words. So we're going to study how we form words in English, how we create new words in English. Then we're going to study the structure of these words. Good? So 2 chapters about the words. Okay. So what we're going to study is the word formation processes. Before we talk about the word formation processes, we need to understand what is a word formation process. What is it? Okay, a word formation process is the creation of a new word. Yeah? So you say, for example, our word formation processes is the processes or are the processes that we use to form new words. The word form means create. So you can add that. The word form, what is it? Form means create. So sometimes actually some books refer to that as word creation processes or word formation processes. The processes that we use to invent, to create new words. That's what we're going to learn in this chapter. Good? You're going to see this chapter is really interesting. You're going to like morphology more than phonetics and phonology. You're going to see. I mean, phonetics and phonology are interesting, but morphology is even more interesting. Yeah? So you're going to like it. I'm sure of that. So the first word formation process or the first word creation process that we use to create a new word in English, something that we call coinage. Yeah? Before I talk about the first formation process, the first word creation process, why do you think we need to study word formation processes? Why do we need to do that? Why do we need to study this? Any ideas? Yes?
To make from them a sentence and understanding.
Not a sentence, a word. To create a word, not a sentence. Okay, syntax has to do with forming sentences. Morphology has to do with forming words. Okay? I'll give you an example before I talk about coinage. What does that mean to create a new word? Okay. So, what does it mean to create a new word? Let's have a verb in English. A verb just like teach. Okay? Let's write it here. So the verb teach. Is it a verb? Or is it a noun? Is it an adjective? What is it? A verb. So, what does it mean? How can I create a new word from the verb teach? Can you create a new word?
Yes.
Teacher. So what did we do in teacher? We added ER. So we created a new word. This is a word formation process. You created a new word. You not invented, because it's not invention here. Because the verb teach is, already exists. So what did you do? You brought this verb, and then you added ER, and now you created a new word. That's a word formation process. This is to make things easy for you to understand what is a word formation process. It's to create a new word. It's to invent sometimes new words. And that's what we're going to do with the first word formation process in English. It is called coinage. Okay, the word coinage doesn't have to do with coins, okay? The word coinage means, look at this, the invention of totally new terms. So it's not like teacher, where you have we already have a verb and then you add ER, for example, or you add ING. Okay? What we do here, we're going to invent totally new terms. It means these terms were not here today. Or say, we're not here in the past. But we invented these new terms because we need them. Let me give you an example before I talk about what is the most typical resource of coinage. Look at the word aspirin. Okay. The word aspirin was not here like 100 years ago. Was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay. People, let's say 100 years ago, did not know the word aspirin. So what did they do? Say, okay, we're going to invent a medicine for headaches, and we're going to call that aspirin. Okay? Aspirin actually is a company that started that, let's say, started that medicine, and they started to call it aspirin, the name of the brand. You know the brand? The name of the brand is aspirin. So what did we do with time? We started to call every single medicine that is for headaches aspirin. Even though aspirin is what? Is a brand. Yeah? Like a trade name. A trade name. Another example, Kleenex. So you know tissues, right? Yeah. We started to call all tissues Kleenex. Even though Kleenex is what? Is a brand. You know a brand? So they, for example, they invented tissues and they invented their company. Their company's name is Kleenex, and they started to call every single tissue in the word Kleenex. So the word Kleenex became, let's say, an ordinary word. It started as a trade name. It started as a brand. Then it became a word. I'll give you another example. Nylon as well. Yeah? It's the same thing. Same thing. It started as a brand, then it became a word. It's about trade names. Yes, trade names. It has to do with commerce, you can say. So I'll give you another example we use in Arabic. For example, the word tide. We use it for every single brand. Even though Tide is just a brand. They invented Tide, for example, and we started, for example, to call Ariel a Tide. Yeah? Why do we do that? We invented new terms. It has to do with the trade names. It has to do with the trade names. Then these terms became general terms, like a word. Can you think of any examples in English, in Arabic, something that was a brand, and now you can call it, it became a general term? You call everything Sony, even if it was Samsung. Yeah? Okay, let me think of another example, just like Coca-Cola. Yeah? We start to call Sprite, and let's say Mirinda, Cola as well. Why is that? It started as a brand. It started as a brand for one trade name. Then this brand or this word became a term, like a word in English, even though it started as a trade name. Think about it at home. Think about it. You use this a lot in your life. You use it a lot. You use brands to call. For example, you would say Kleenex for tissues, even though you have other brands. You have Fine, you have other brands, right? But I keep calling this Kleenex. Why? Because this trade name became a general term. That's one way of creating new words in English. So a trade name becomes a general term. It becomes a normal word, even though if it started as a trade name, it started as a brand. Yeah? You see what I'm talking about? Yeah, you have other examples in the textbook, but those are the most famous examples, like aspirin. For Panadol, for example, you would say aspirin. Even though aspirin is a different brand from Panadol. But why do we do that? Because the word aspirin started as a trade name, and now it became a general term, like a normal word that we use in our daily life. Is this clear about coinage? So again, coinage does not have to do with coins, okay? It has to do, it is a word formation process. It means it's a word creation process. We use coinage to create new words, okay? Now, what is this process? What do we do? We actually invent. It means they say they don't exist, or they did not exist 100 years ago. What did we do? We invented a term. We invented a word for a trade name, for a brand, and then people started using this brand or this word as a general term, as a normal word. Yeah? Are you following? Good. So what it says here, the most typical resource is the invented trade names for one company's product. So they actually have the product, which is tissues, and they said, okay, let's call it Kleenex. This is the name of our product. Now people started to use the word Kleenex as a normal word. Yeah? This is coinage. Okay, company's product, which become general terms, and those are the examples. Yeah? Anyone wants to say something? Sorry? Okay. So those are 3 examples. You have also other examples in the textbook. Any questions about coinage? Is this clear? This is one word formation process. Okay, what can I say? What do you notice the difference between coinage and this word formation process? What is the difference?
Coinage did not exist in the past.
Exactly. We invent a new word. This one, for example, the word or the verb teach already exists in English. But I created a new word by adding er, teacher. That's a new word. That's a word formation process. We're going to talk about this word formation process later. Okay? So we're done with coinage. Another word formation process that exists in English So another word formation process, number 2, borrowing. So English, what did it do? They invented new terms for products, let's say for trade names. Then they said, okay, we need new words in English. Should we borrow from other languages? So English has borrowed from other languages. Let's see. What does it mean, borrowing? Is the taking over of words from other languages. Okay? So English borrowed from other languages. So throughout history, English language has adopted a vast means large, number of loan words from other languages. It means English has borrowed a number of words from other languages. It borrowed from Arabic. It borrowed from French. English borrowed from, let's say, Dutch, German, from different languages, from Italian. Let's look at the examples. Those are the examples. So let's look at the first example. You do have alcohol. Alcohol is originally from Arabic. So English, what did it decide to do? To borrow this word from Arabic. Now it became an English word. But it's not English. It is originally Arabic. This is borrowing. Yeah? Also English has borrowed from Dutch. You know Dutch language? Not German, from the Netherlands. Holland. Okay? German is different. Dutch is the language of the Netherlands. Netherlands or Holland. Okay? The word boss. The word boss is not originally English.
The word, write it in English by translating. Or
You mean this word, because Arabic does not have Latin letters? Yes, that's what they do. They cannot write it in Arabic, of course, so they actually use Latin letters. But it's the same word. Keep this in mind. In borrowing, what English does, it borrows the same word without any changes, because you're going to see later on they could borrow the word with some changes. In this case, no. They borrow the word as it is in that language. So alcohol. Instead of the sound ha in Arabic, they replaced it with ha, because they don't have the sound ha. Okay? So this one is the same word in Arabic. And they borrowed it as it is. Okay, they borrowed the word boss in Dutch. Okay? So it was in Dutch, so then what English did, it borrowed the word boss as it is from Dutch. Again, Dutch is the language of the Netherlands. Okay. This one, croissant. This one is originally from French. Yeah, so what English does, it borrowed it from French, and now it's an English word. Okay, they pronounce it croissant, and instead of actually saying croissant, just like they say it in French, they actually pronounce the R sound. Okay? Also, the word lilac. You know lilac? The color lilac. So it's not originally English, it is Persian. So the word lilac, it did not exist in English. So what English did, it borrowed it from Persian. You know Persian? The language of what? Iran. Yes. Iran. Exactly. So Iran, they speak Persian language. They have the word lilac. English has borrowed it from Iran. As it is. Okay? With no changes. Look at this. Piano and pizza. Those are not English words. They are originally from Italian. So English has borrowed the word piano, has borrowed the word pizza from Italian as they are. English did not make any changes to the word here, to these words. Okay? Then, you do have pretzel. Pretzel, the sweet. You know pretzel? Yeah. So pretzel from German, as it is. They borrowed it from German. Also, you have another word, robot, from Czech. You know? You know Czech? Yeah, in Central Europe? Okay, the word robot also has borrowed it from Czech. You have the word tycoon. Tycoon, it means a powerful, rich person or a powerful, rich businessman. Okay? So the word tycoon was borrowed from Japanese as it is. So tycoon is not originally English. It was borrowed from Japanese. Okay? You have the word yogurt from Turkish. So originally the word yogurt is not English. So what do they do? What do they do in English? They borrowed it from Turkish. Could be they did not have a word for yogurt, so they borrowed the word as it is. Also, another example of borrowing is zebra. Zebra is borrowed from Bantu. You know Bantu? It's an African language, actually. Yeah. So they borrowed it from an African language, the word zebra, for the animal zebra. Good? So what is borrowing? Borrowing is the taking over of words from other languages. So these words that you see here on the slides, they're not originally English. Not originally English, they were borrowed from different languages. Can you think of the other way around? Can you think of borrowed words in Arabic? Arabic, for example, has words that are borrowed from different languages. Can you give me examples? So you use it to say as a word in Arabic. Could be. Yes, could be. This word, for example, is not originally Arabic. It was borrowed from other languages. What other words do you think are borrowed in Arabic? Yes, exactly. This word is borrowed from other languages. Radio, computer, lots of words. Internet, yes. So they say each language in the world has borrowed from other languages. English is the same. English has words that are borrowed from other languages. This is a word formation process, a word creation process. So instead of creating a word, just like coinage, inventing a totally new term, what they did in borrowing, they just borrowed the words as they are, with no changes. Okay? I'm going to talk about a special kind of borrowing in English. Let me show you. A special kind of borrowing that we have here is called loan translation or calque. Let me show you. So we do have a special type of borrowing. So we said about the words here. Look at these here. The words here, English has borrowed them as they are with no changes. So the word pizza, go to Italy and listen to people how they say pizza. Same thing, piano. And English, what did English do? It borrowed it as it is. Okay? Okay. We have a special type of borrowing. Special type of borrowing in English. It is described as loan translation or calque. So what do they do in that special type of borrowing? In this process, there's a direct translation of the elements of a word into the borrowing language. What does that mean? Let's see. So if you look at here, skyscraper. Before you look at skyscraper, look at the example here. Un gratte-ciel. What do you think this word's from? From? French. So if you look at this phrase is from French. Un gratte-ciel, it means literally. The literal translation of this phrase is scrape sky. So English said, okay, I want this word. I don't have this word in my language. So what should I do? I should borrow it from a different language. So English looked at French, and they found in French they have this phrase, un gratte-ciel, for very, very tall buildings. Yeah? Very, very tall buildings. So this is the name that they use in French, but English does not have a word. They said, we need to create a new word for very, very, very tall buildings. So he said, okay, let's try to translate this phrase from French to English. They translated and they came up with a scrape sky. They said, okay, a scrape sky, it doesn't fit in English. We need to change it a little bit to become English. So what do? They refer to it as a skyscraper. We call this process loan translation or calque. Again, what do they do in loan translation or calque? They said, okay, an example of that, very, very tall buildings in English did not have a word. So they said, okay, we should borrow a word from French or from other language. They found it in French. They decided to borrow it from French. So in France, they call very, very tall buildings, they call it un gratte-ciel. It means a scrape sky when they translate it into English. Okay? They said the word a scrape sky does not fit English. Let's change it a little bit to fit English. So they changed it into a skyscraper. So what do you notice the difference about this kind of borrowing and the other kind of borrowing?
Borrowing is taking words without changing.
Yeah, without any changes. Pizza, pizza, and the same in Italy. Piano, piano, the same in Italy. Okay? And so on. What about calque?
They take words, but it it doesn't fit English, they make some changes.
So, number one, they translate it. That's why they call it loan translation. So they have the word from the other language. They translate it literally. You know, literal translation? They translate it literally. Then they change it a little bit to fit English. See this special type of borrowing? So it is borrowing, but let's say in a different sense. You borrow the same word. You borrow the word from French. You translate it literally. Then what happens? You change it a little bit to fit English. We call this process loan translation or calque. Yeah? So far we have talked about two word creation processes, two word formation processes. Number one, we talked about coinage. We said in coinage you invent a totally new terms, and these terms, let's say, could be names for products, or could be trade names, brands that people started using as normal words. That's number one. Number two, we talked about borrowing. We said English needed new words. So what did English do? It has borrowed from other languages. Number one, we said number one, the first type of borrowing is to borrow the word as it is with no changes, and that's what we talked about, with no changes. They just took the word from the other language. Yeah, and those are the examples. You have these examples in your textbook. Then they said, okay, we do have a special type of borrowing that we call loan translation or calque. Okay, calque or loan translation. What do? They translate the phrase or the word from that language, then they change it a little bit to fit English. Good so far? Do you have any questions about borrowing or coinage? Can we talk about another word formation process? Another word formation process that we're going to talk about is blending. Okay, before I talk about blending, what do you think the word blending means?
Mixing.
Mixing, yes. You know the blender?
Yes.
So what do you do with the blender? You mix. So what we're going to do in blending is to mix two words. Mix them together and have a new word. Okay, look at this. What does it mean, blending? Is the combining of two. This one is off. Sorry, this one has to be off. Okay. Blending is the combining of two separate forms to produce a single term. So what do we do in blending? We combine, we mix two words in English to come up with a new word. So blending is accomplished, look at this, by taking only the beginning of one word and joining it to the end of the other word. So you do have, we said, blending is the combining of two separate forms to produce a single term. So what do? We blend, we mix two words to create a new word. What do we do in blending? We take the beginning of one word and we join it to the end of the word. Let's look at examples. Look what we do in blending. Look at the word smoke. Look at the word fog. You ended up with a new word in English, which is smoke. So what did we do? We combined the beginning of the first word with the ending of the second word. So remember, keep this in mind. Blending, what do? Beginning of the first word, ending of the second word. Look at the second example. You know what smoke is?
Yes.
What is it? What is this smoke? Okay, in large cities, very industrial cities, they have a lot of smoke. And because that smoke looks like a fog, you cannot see anything. That's why they refer to it as smoke. So fog, you know fog?
Yes.
Yeah. So this smoke looks like a fog because this city, for example, it has lots of, let's say, factories, lots of smoke that you cannot see anything. So this smoke looks like a fog. They decided to call it a smoke. So they blended, they mixed, they combined the two words. But what did they do? They combined the first part of the word with the ending of the second word. Look at this word. Breakfast and lunch. They have the word brunch. We created a new word. We formed a new word. What did we do? We combined or mixed the beginning of the first word and the ending of the second word. We end up with brunch. Okay, this one has to be this way. This one has to be red, yeah? Yeah, it has to be this way, yes, because it has to be brunch. Right? Okay. Look at the third example. Now, actually, Spanish and English, you're going to create Spanglish. Okay, some people actually, I think we have a word this in Arabic. When you combine Arabic with English, you end up with a new word. Yeah? So what do they do when, for example, Spanish speakers, they started speaking English in a very Spanish way, they say, that you end up with Spanglish. Yeah? Sometimes Arabic speakers, when they speak English, you refer to this to us with a single word, which is Arabizi. Yeah? This is the same. The word Arabizi is what? Is blending. It's blending. Blending. So we created a new word, right? We created a new word. How did we create that word? The word, the beginning of the word Arabi and the ending of the word Inglesi. And you ended up with a new word. This is what we do here. This is what we do with blending. We mix the beginning of words and the ending of the second word. So you have other examples in the textbook. You can read them by yourselves. You can read the examples by yourselves. Okay? Before we talk about clipping. Do you have any questions about blending? So think about the word blending as mixing. Okay? Mixing, combining, joining two words to create a new word. So far we have talked about 3 word formation processes. Again, we talked about coinage. And we said it's the invention of totally new terms using trade names. Number 2, we talked about borrowing. And we said you borrow the word as it is from the other language. And you have a special type of borrowing, which is calque or loan translation. We said you translate the phrase, but you change it a little bit to fit English. Number 3 is blending. So what do we do with blending? Think about the word just like blender, mixing. Okay? We mix the beginning of one word and the ending of the second word. Good? Okay. So Spanish and English as well, I talked about them. Number 4, we have another word formation process, which is clipping. Okay, clipping is a little bit different from blending. In blending, you mix 2 words and create another word. Look at this, what I did here in blending. You have the first word, then you have plus, then you have the second word equals a new word. Okay? With clipping, no. What do we do with clipping? Is the clipping is the reduction of a word of more than 1 syllable to a shorter form in casual speech. So sometimes we could have very long words. So what do? We clip it. We cut it off. Look what we do here. You do have, for example, gasoline. Instead of saying gasoline, what do they say in English? They say gas. So they clip or they cut this part. Okay. They say facsimile as well. This is the original word for fax. So instead of actually having the very long word, it's very hard to say, for example, facsimile. What do they say? Fax. Look at another example. Instead of saying advertisement, they say ad. So they clip or they cut off, for example, this part, and this part. So clipping is a little bit different from blending. Clipping is to cut words, cut long words, reduce long words. Okay. So we do have types of clipping. We have back clipping. Back clipping is to cut the ending of the word. Okay. So look, it's written in red. Okay. So we cut this off. We cut this off as well, and we cut this off. This is back clipping, is to cut the ending of the word. We have other types of clipping, or the reduction of words, which is middle clipping. So you have an example just like influenza. And instead of actually say this in English, what do? They call it the flu. So what did they do with this word? Because they thought it's a little bit long, they cut this off. The one is in red. Do you see it? And they cut this off and they ended up with flu. So we call this middle clipping. So back clipping, you cut the ending of the word. You have middle clipping, you just leave the middle part. We have something that we call front clipping. In front clipping, what do? We cut the first, yes, the first part of the word or the beginning of the word. So instead of saying telephone, you're going to hear most English speakers say phone. Yeah, and instead of actually telephone. They thought it was a little bit long, so what do? They clipped it, cut it, they reduced it. Okay. You do have something that we call complex clipping. In complex clipping, an example, you do have the word situation comedy. You know what a situation comedy is? You know the very famous show Friends? So it's not a complete episode. It's like 15-minute episode, and it makes you laugh. That's why they call it situation comedy. So these kind of episodes are called situation comedy. So instead of saying actually situation comedy, they clipped the ending of the word situation and they clipped the ending of the word comedy, and they ended up with sitcom. This is not blending, okay? Remember, with blending, we blend the beginning of the word and the ending of the second word. In this complex clipping, we clipped the ending of the word situation, we clipped the ending of the word comedy, then we joined them together. Good? Let's look at other examples before I continue. Yeah, we have the fifth type of clipping. Fifth type of clipping is name clipping. So sometimes instead of saying Edward, what do they say? It. So we clipped the ending of the word. And instead of saying Elizabeth, they say Liz. Instead of saying Michael, they say Mike. And instead of saying Ronald, they say Ron. Yeah? So what is the clipping? It's the reduction of words. Let me give you more examples from the textbook. They have a lot of examples in your textbook. Let me show you. Let's look at this. Clipping on page. Okay, if you notice, I skipped compounding. Okay? We're going to go back to compounding later, because compounding is a morphological process. And we're going to talk about morphological processes together. Okay? We're going to go back to it. Don't worry. Look at clipping. Clipping on page 66. Yes. Let's look at this. We talked about the word facsimile, and we said they call it fax, the third line. Do you see that? Also the word advertisement, they say ad. You do have a lot of words in here. You have flu, which is influenza. You do have BAM, which is permanent. You do have phone, telephone, plane, aeroplane. Instead of saying aeroplane, what do they say? Plane. This is clipping, front clipping. You do have pram. Pram is actually the baby carriage. Pramulator. This is the word, the original word is pramulator. And what do? They cut it off. They cut let's say the ending of the word. And they use the shorter form. Okay, what else? You have sitcom, pop. You do have just like public house. Yeah? So they cut it off to pop. You do have sitcom. It's a complex clipping, situation comedy. They cut the ending of the first word, the ending of the second word. They joined it together. You do have names. English speakers also like to clip each other names. Do you see that? Just like Al, Ed, Liz, Mike, Ron, Sam, and so on. So also you do have other clipping examples. Look at the last line, or the line before the last. You do have as in chem. Chem is chemistry. And instead of saying chemistry, they cut or they reduced it to a shorter form. You do have exam, examination. Instead of saying examination, what is the word formation process? Clipping. They clipped the ending of the word. You do have gym, gymnasium. So they clipped the ending of the word. You have laboratory. They clipped the ending of the word. Math, mathematics. They clipped the ending of the word. You do have physical education. You know physical education? Yeah. So they clipped also the ending of the first word and the ending of the second word. They joined them together. This is complex clipping, right? Also you have political science. Yeah? This one is political science. They clipped the ending of the first word. They clipped the ending of the second word. They joined them together and they ended up with policy. Then you do have prof instead of professor. So they clip the ending of the word as well. You do have typographical error. You know when I say sometimes we have a typo. What does it mean typo? For example, let's say you typed something on the computer, but it's not spelled well, or it's misspelled. We say we have a typo in here. Okay? It's an error in typing. So we call this a typo. Also typo, the kind of word formation process, is clipping. See that? Let's talk about the differences between blending and clipping. Okay? We said in blending, you actually you take the beginning of the first word and the ending of the second word and you blend them together. Remember, the beginning of the first word, the ending of the second word. This is with blending. Yes. Beginning and then ending. With clipping, what do? We cut part of the word. So we have different types of clipping. We said you could cut, for example, the last part. You could cut, this is the last part, the first one, just like telephone. You could cut two parts at the beginning and the end. You could actually have two words, and you cut one part from the first word and a second part from the second word, and then join them together. So do not confuse, for example, sitcom with brunch. This one, the first part with the first part, in blending the beginning of the word and the ending of the next word. Okay? Okay. And also we talked about another type of clipping, which is name clipping. And instead of actually pronouncing the whole name, what do they used to do? What do they do these days actually? They clip each other's names. Good? Good with clipping? Yeah? Okay. Can we talk about another formation process, another word formation process? If you have any questions about any of the previous word formation processes or word creation processes, please say so. No? Okay. We're going to talk about the last word formation process for today. Yeah, it's the last one for today. Let's talk about it. It is acronym. Have you heard of acronyms before? No? Okay. Before I actually look at the definition of acronyms, we're going to look at the examples. So look at the examples first, then we can go back to the definition of acronyms. Look at the word CD. CD originally is compact disk. So what do? They take the initials letters or the initial letters of the word. So they decided to take the first letter of compact and the first letter of disk. And they ended up with a new word that we call CD. Another word is UNESCO. You hear about UNESCO a lot these days. United Nations, yeah, from the United Nations. So the word UNESCO is an acronym. It means, how do they create this word? How did they create this word? They decided to take the initials of the initial letters of each word. So UNESCO is United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So they decided to take the U, the N, the E, the S, the C, and the O, and they ended up with a new word, which is UNESCO. This is an acronym. You have NATO. You hear NATO all the time on the news, right? So where did this word come from? They created this new word by taking the initial letters of every single word. So it is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They took the letter N, the letter A, the letter T, and the letter O, and they ended up with NATO. See what acronym is? So what do we do in acronyms or alphabetism? That's another name for it. You have it in your textbook. That's another name for it. Are formed from the initial letters of a set of words. Yeah? Let's look at the examples. We have other examples in our textbook. We skipped actually back formation and conversion. Why? Because they are also morphological processes. And I decided to have all the morphological processes together. Okay, so we could understand. For example, we cannot talk about compounding and not talk about any of the morphological process. So we're going to leave morphological process for next time. Okay? So let's look at back formation. No, I did not talk about back formation. We talked about acronyms. Yes, it's on page 68. We're not going to follow the order of the textbook. Okay? We're going to follow we're going to say this in certain orders. Let's look at this. You do have CD. We talked about it. You do have VCR. VCR, video, cassette, recorder. So they took the V, they took the third line. Do you see the third line? Okay. VCR, you do have video, cassette, recorder. They took the V, they took the C, and they took the R. And they ended up with a new word, which is VCR. We talked about NATO and UNESCO. I actually did not look NASA up. You can look it up, what the initial letters of NASA. But NASA, you know what is it? It is the organization they used to launch rockets to the space. It's an American organization, yeah? Okay, then you have the NATO. We looked it up, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. You do have UNESCO as well. Okay, notice that what we do here, we read these initial letters as one word as well, right? So I do not say, for example, UNESCO. I say UNESCO. I read it like a normal word.
And in capital letter.
And we write them in capital letters, exactly. Acronyms are always written in capital letters, always. Okay, what else you have? You have, for example, the word laser. The word laser is an acronym. It means light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So they took the L, they took the A, they took the S, they took the E, and they took the R. And now it became a word, laser. Okay? You do have a lot of examples in here. Radar, you have scuba diving, and so on. Okay? You do have a very let's say, known example, which is ATM. Yeah? The word ATM, where did we come up with this word? It's an acronym. It means we took the initial letters of the word. So it means automatic teller machine. Yeah? So they took the A with automatic, then teller, they took the T, then they took the M. They ended up with a new word, which is ATM. Also, you have PIN. You have personal identification number. Sometimes when you open your mobile phone, they ask you for the PIN. Yeah. Or when you go, let's say, to the ATM, they ask you for the PIN code. So what is PIN? PIN is an acronym. Look at this. We actually write it in capital letters, and we read it or pronounce it as a word. So you have PIN. They took the P with personal. They took the I with identification, and they took the N with number. And they ended up with the word PIN. Okay, so far, is this difficult? No. Actually, it's very clear, right? All I need you to do is to read these and study the slides as well, okay? Before we look at the study questions, let's do a quick review of what we talked about today. A quick review. So, you're going to see later chapters. The morphology is really interesting, really easy. Maybe the syntax is a little bit harder than the other chapters. Then semantics and pragmatics are really, really interesting and really easy to understand. Okay. So what we talked about today is the word formation process, and we said word formation means is the creation of a new word. Good. We talked about the coinage for today. We talked about 5. Yes, we talked about 5 word formation processes. We talked about coinage, and we said the word coinage does not have to do with coins, okay? It's a word formation process. It's a word creation process where we invent new terms. How do we invent these new terms? It's actually trade names for one company's products, okay? And we use these trade names as normal words. And we gave you examples just like aspirin, Kleenex, and nylon. We also talked about borrowing. And we said you could borrow words from other languages as they are, just like these examples, or you could do some, let's say, a little bit of change. You translate the phrase or the word, then you change it a little bit to fit the language that you're borrowing, to which you're borrowing, let's say. Okay, we talked about this example on card ciel, and we said they called it in English a skyscraper. They literally translated from French, then they changed it into a skyscraper. Also, we talked about blending. When you think about blending, think about mixing. You mix the beginning of the first word of one word and the end of the other word, and we talked about these examples. Okay? Also, we talked about clipping. Yeah? What you need is to cut, let's say, part of the word, because this word maybe it's long or made with of more than one syllable. Okay? So we cut it to a shorter form, and we talked about these examples. We talked about types of clipping, and we talked about acronyms. And we said in acronyms, we take the initial letters of every single word, and you write it in capital letters, and you read it as a word. Yeah, you need to go, yes. Okay, what I need you to do is to look at the study questions now. Look at the study questions on page 71. I need you to think about question number 1 and question number 2. Look at question number 1 and question number 2 on page 71. Think about them. You can discuss the answers with your partners. Okay. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Look at question number 1 and question number 2. no. Let's give them 5 minutes to answer the question. You can discuss the answers with your partner. Okay? Question number 1 and question number 2.
The affix is combined of prefix and suffix.
We haven't talked about the affix yet. Look at question number 1 and question number 2, and that's it. Okay? We haven't talked about this yet. This is a morphological process. We're going to talk about them next time. All I need you for now is to look at question number 1 and question number 2.
Look to question number 3. So
Number 3 is not included for now. We haven't talked about this. 1 and 2. That's it. You're done? Yes. Okay, let's do number 1. Number 1, you wanted to do number 1?
honeymoon calculus.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Yes. Can you explain to us why? Look at example number 1, 2, and 3 and try to explain to us why you chose 1.
Because it's
Why is it called?
بالعربي
No, in English.
بعرفش.
Are you from the Faculty of Education or are you from English department?
Yes.
English department, not the Faculty of Education. Okay. Anyone wants to answer? I know you have, could be all textbooks that you took from your classmates in the department. What I need you to do is to explain to me why you chose number 1 and number 2 or number 3.
We chose number 1 because we took the word in Italian and we made some changes in order to fit in Spanish.
Exactly, that's Spanish, yes. So what do we do? Look at this.
Translated.
Something, yeah, we translated.
We
changed it to fit English. Exactly. Let's look at the first one. Let's try to explain why we chose the first one. So calc means loan translation. You do have luna de miel in Spanish, yeah? It means, luna means moon, okay? Do is like of in Spanish. Then you have miel means honey. So what do? They translated, sorry. Okay, so what do? They translate it into English. They translate it as moon of honey, literally. Then what do? They change it to fit English. They said, okay, honeymoon. This is the example of calc or loan translation, just like the skyscraper. They translate it literally, then they change it to fit English. Let's look at number 2. Machines, right? Japanese, machine, English. What do you think is this process? Borrowing. Which one borrowed from the other?
English.
Japanese borrowed from English. Actually, the word machine is in English. And if you look at this word, it's actually borrowed from French. So English has borrowed it from French, machine, and then Japanese has borrowed it from English. So this word, Japanese has borrowed from English. So it is borrowing, but for what? For Japanese. Look at the third one. Training Hungarian and training English. Borrowing as well. Is this calc or loan translation? No. B also, it's not calc or, let's say, a loan translation because you borrowed the word as it is. It's not a special kind of borrowing.
Without
right?
change.
Yeah, look at this. So Hungarians decided to borrow the word training from English. Did they do some changes to it?
Yes.
No, it's actually the same. You look at the spelling, it's actually pronounced training in Hungarian, right? So they did not do any changes to the word. So this is just normal borrowing. Normal borrowing. It's not a special kind of borrowing, which is called calque or loan translation. Do we understand why we choose A?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Number 2. Number 2.
We describe this process.
Can you read that question, please?
The term Vaseline was originally created as a trade name for a product, but has become an ordinary English word. What is this? The technical term used to describe this process? Coinage.
Coinage. Can you explain to us why?
Vaseline, it's a name for a company.
A product, yeah.
Yeah, and we call Vaseline for this product as a normal English
We use it,
word.
yeah, we use it as a normal word. So this process is called coinage. Thank you. Yes, coinage. Good so far. Do you have any questions about any of these processes? No? Okay. For next time, what we're going to do is to talk about. So we did skip compounding. You do have back formation, conversion, then you have derivation. All of these processes are actually morphological processes. That's why we're going to talk about them together next time. Fine? Okay. Okay, we can read about them for next time and prepare. Let me just take attendance for the day.